Hey, what's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome into the Rams Skinny here on the LAFB network. It is Thursday, soon to be Friday, maybe Saturday, depending when you're listening to this, but we're happy to have you here listening to all things Rams. Final week of preseason football, Rams and Texans. They just wrapped up joint practices today, which we will start the show with. But first and foremost, looking good and green over there in Highland Park. My man, Skinny T. What's up, man? How you doing?
Yeah, I don't wear color very often.
You don't?
My laundry basket, if you look at it at the end of the week, it's just black and gray. But occasionally, sometimes I wear green.
Yeah. I've
Sometimes
gotten
blue.
too. You look good in blue. Brings out your eyes. I've gotten too fat to wear colors. Like I just have to wear black now. I just
That's when it originated. I'm actually at a low weight for my life. I was up about $180 a couple of years ago when I was working a couple of jobs and not terribly happy doing so. So that's when the black trend started and just carried over. It's easy.
I've never once seen you, and I've known you for what 6 years now, where you've looked overweight. So I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Oh, this was before I moved to LA.
Oh, so way back when. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. Black is just it hides a little bit and hides sweat because it's so hot now. So
Any stains too?
exactly. It's great. I True Classic Tees, if anyone's heard of them.
Yeah.
We need a small. I love True Classic Tees. Yeah, that's right. Literally my wardrobe. If you go in my drawer behind me here, it's about 11 True Classic Tees and then 12 LAFB shirts. That's literally all I have. My wife hates it. Absolutely hates it. Every picture, like, why does every picture are you wearing an LAFB shirt? I'm like, gotta be on brand, babe. Gotta be on brand. So
I am the brand.
Yeah. Speaking of brand, before we get to Rams joint practice, show is always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE. Football is around the corner, so plenty of stuff to bet on, and betonline.ag is the place to do it. Rams over under set at 8.5. We like the over. Matthew Stafford MVP odds. Love those. If you're a USC fan, Miller Moss Heisman odds are crazy low, high. I never know the term, but you get great returns on your bet. I think he's like plus 5,000 or something. And in Lincoln Riley offense, the quarterback is always a chance to win Heisman. So all that can be done at betonline.ag. Make sure to tell them the guys at the Rams Skinny and the LAFB network sent you. Joint practice today with the Houston Texans. We know of CJ Stroud's affinity for Matthew Stafford, calling him the best, one of the best. I think did he call him the best or just the best behind Mahomes in the NFL a few months ago?
Yeah, something like that. Big. I think it was he likes him more than Mahomes because there's more applicable things that he feels like he can take from Stafford. Whereas Mahomes, flipping the ball behind his back, it's like not like one. He probably shouldn't learn how to do that.
Yeah. That's fair.
Keep your form, but I think he came out as ahead, and then Caleb Williams also talking up our guy Matthew Stafford. Probably they can't bet, but they like that bet. Matthew Stafford MVP.
Yes, they better not bet, or they will see a nice 1-year suspension on that. But good to see they got love for Staff, and we always say all the time, one of the most underrated still somehow quarterbacks in the NFL. Every guest we have on agrees. So I don't know if the rankings are just made like blindly, the people do, but anyway, that's besides the point. So joint practice, I'm going to ask you what you have heard or seen or we've kind of delved into. One of the big things I heard about was defensive line and the pass rush looking good yet again, which I think is just so exciting. This Rams pass rush looks to be a strength of this defense based on who they lost and what they gained. It was just a big question mark. Don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but continually looking better and better and more improved in that department. So, but what have you heard, less than a few hours since those joint practices ended?
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on what you were saying, Jared Verse still out there chirping. Letting out big howls when he's doing well. So that's it's fun to see that they're the vibes around this team are just incredible. Just so much youth, so much fun momentum. And that, I mean, the defensive line is developing an attitude. I think, so long it was defined by Aaron Donald, and Aaron Donald was not particularly a vocal leader. He was definitely a lead by example kind of guy. And, you think about Greg Gaines and Ashawn Robinson, not necessarily guys. Leonard Floyd, will throw him in there. It's like these guys aren't the most talkative kind of guys, quiet fellows. So
Von Miller was probably the most, but he was here for 5 months. So
who was that?
Von Miller was probably the most vocal, but he was here for 5 months. So
yeah, exactly. I was thinking about him randomly earlier today. I don't know why. These things are going through my head. Just kind of interesting tidbits from practice coming out. They added another running back.
Real quick, because I want to get to that. Great tidbit, but I just go back to verse real quick. I don't want to get too far down and then be weird going back. Can I throw out a nickname for Jared Verse?
Sure.
And this, okay, I'm gonna have to explain it because this is going deep here, and this could be either the worst nickname or everyone will really understand it and be like, "We're making that a thing." Like, what if we call him the Prophet?
Oh, like Bible verses?
And here's why. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Bible verses, and he's always preaching or chirping, so he's the Prophet.
What about the preacher?
Or the preacher? I kind of like that too.
Speaking his verses, I don't know.
Maybe the preacher's better than the prophet. At first, I was trying to think of something with Psalms, because all the verses in Psalms, and he's like singing eloquently, chirping.
Saint Verse, Saint Jared. I don't know.
Anyway,
no, but
we'll workshop it. Back to the real stuff.
Yeah, added a running back. Boston Scott seems to be dealing with something. We saw him get banged up in the last game, so they added another guy. I don't think that he's going to be competing for starting positions, but just an interesting thing to kind of keep an eye out for. Also on that front, Jerry Jacobs gone from the team, who was added because there were so many injuries. Darius Williams kind of getting worked back in, it sounds like, at this camp. Plenty, the depth, we talked about kind of with Trey Tomlinson, the depth is kind of centered more with the safeties who have this versatility that can move over into the cornerback room. So, everything seems to be pointing up, from the injury perspective. Jonah Jackson, we're going to talk about the offensive line a little bit. Jonah Jackson kind of is starting to work back in. No sign of Rob Havenstein. And Alaric Jackson. So, and it sounds like this offense put the Rams defense to the test, with their hot young quarterback and, in the running game and also in the passing game, he and Tank Dell have it together. So, McVay came out of this practice saying everybody got exactly what they needed from this. Which means they really, really put them to the test out there. So yeah, those are kind of the big takeaways. Anything else that you saw?
That's the skinny, huh? That's the skinny of it. So, surprised by Jared Jacobs. It was said he was released with an injury settlement. So they didn't really announce what injury or how severe or whatever.
It was a groin injury. So I guess severe enough.
Yeah, clearly.
He's not on the team.
Clearly severe enough where, it felt anyway, no disrespect, but he was brought in as a camp body anyway with the injury to Kendrick and Williams, but had a long shot of making the team. As we talked about last episode, the depth on this secondary is pretty impressive. What we say, 20 players or 19 without Kendrick. And you're looking at keeping 10 probably. So, there's a solid 9 guys still not going to make it. Now 8 with Jacobs gone. So, unfortunate for him. Obviously, could have battled through and had a shot, but, best of luck to him wherever it takes him. And maybe he makes it on the practice squad regardless, after that injury settlement. So, but no, I think this is a good offense to test this defense. This is a Texans team that was in the playoffs last year, just like the Rams, on the AFC side. They won their first playoff game and in pretty dominant fashion. And this offense got better and better as the year went on. And not to mention they added Stephon Diggs in the offseason to the receiving room. So you got Diggs, you got Tank Dell, as you mentioned. They've got talent at running back. The offensive line improved. And then obviously CJ Stroud, the former rookie of the year, manning it all from that side. So, I think it was a really good offensive test. We won't see this preseason game will be, we talked about how important the preseason is, especially for this Rams team development. This third game now is really like just the depth pieces. Like we're going to see no one that's even a bubble player in terms of starting potential, or these are just true depth plays. So it'll still be a game worth watching. We'll obviously be in tuned and see with that. But these practices, I think, were really good because you'll see starters on starters. And the fact this defense did have some challenges with this offense, but was able to rebound. That we talked about the pass rush and whatnot, I think is really, really encouraging. The only thing I mentioned, this is about the Rams, so I'll just be really quick on it. But I think McVay said something to the tune of DeMeco Ryans running like one of the most organized and impressive practices he's seen since doing these joint practices. So, I mean, we all know how impressive DeMeco Ryans is and how he was as a first-year head coach, leading that team from almost dumpster fire, having the two top picks 2 years in a row to a playoff berth. But I think hearing McVay praise a coach in that manner, I think speaks a lot. So the Houston Texans team isn't going away. They're going to be a really good team, and it's probably for the better there in the AFC. And the Rams really won't have to face them except for once every 4 years or the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really incredible team. And I was actually thinking about this a couple of days ago, like how many good quarterbacks are there in the league right now? CJ Stroud is probably going to pan out. You don't see guys play that well and then drop off. There's lots of good talk about Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, obviously. Like we could be in a real golden age of offensive football. But looking at, unless there's anything else, we can pop over to this game and talk about this for a little bit.
Yeah, pop on over.
Popping over. It's going to be more interesting to see who doesn't play. Usually at this point, probably not going to see Jordan Whittington. I already mentioned, the running backs. We'll see the new young man that they brought in. Probably not so much Boston Scott. This is going to be a big Zach Van Valkenburg kind of game. I feel like this is going to be a JJ Lapp kind of a game. All the way. Yeah, a lot of Drake Stoops probably. I was looking at the snap counts from last year's week 3. Do you remember a guy named Jaden Woodbay? Quindell Johnson?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, I remember them, but yeah.
Oh, you do? Robert Rochelle played a good amount in that game as well. So,
wow.
Those are the kind of names that you're going to be looking at in this week. So, the Stetson Bennett conversation is still worth having. I feel like, is he going to play or is he going to rest? Where do you put that?
I mean, if it was me, he'd play the whole game again. I think he needs to show that he is ready to be the backup for 2 weeks. I mean, I don't want to overstate it because Matthew Stafford is, as far as we know, healthy. He's back at practice, doing everything, padded up, going through everything. But any given Sunday, you have to have a competent backup. You can't just say like, well, as long as we get to week 3 and then Jimmy G's there and, he's a competent backup, we're okay. I mean, you got to be ready for every single game. And so he has to show that he is capable of being that backup. Now, like I said, I think he's improved week over week. I think last year he showed that he can be that. But if it's me, I'm still giving him every rep in this third preseason game to A, help for the future, and B, just have him have reps if, God forbid, something happens in week 1 or 2. Do I think they'll do that? I honestly have no idea because I agree with you. We're not going to see much of anyone else. And so there's the thought too of like, is it worth trotting him out with even lesser talent around him? Like, how can we evaluate? Like, if he's not even throwing to the ones, but he's throwing to like guys that we know are not making the team, is it worth evaluating that? Because are we going to get a true evaluation if he's not having the pieces around him to play with? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I think if I'm just a betting man, if I'm on BetOnline.ag, I think he'll play a quarter and then we'll see Dresser win probably the rest of the way. What do you think?
Yeah, that's probably the way they'll go. I'm in agreement with you though that I would like him to be in there for all 3 or for all 4 quarters. Jimmy Garoppolo is not doing much for the next month or so. Yeah. Why not throw him in there in the mix and get him a couple of reps under center? They're make sure Stetson Bennett is rested completely for his possible backup. Well, he will be the backup heading into week 1 and week 2 with the suspension. So, it's such a convoluted way of going about things, just because he's so cautious, which I appreciate about good old Sean, certainly. But it makes our job much more harder. But here's a name I'll throw out there. Do you think we'll see any Beaux Limmer in preseason week 3?
Oh man, I don't think so. I think he has impressed everyone with how he's played, and this is an opportunity now for Justin Dedich, who has played some guard in the preseason also, as we've talked about his versatility, a chance for him to play virtually the entire game and supplant himself to making this roster, which we both think he will. So opportunities for guys like that. But I think Beaux Limmer's done enough based on the McVay formula of preseason that he doesn't need to play at all. And let me ask you this. Is there a world where he has looked so good, not even saying from the preseason games, but in practice too, because they've spoken highly about him, where he has a real shot to be the starting center of this team? And obviously we'll talk about what that means for shuffling the rest of the guys, but do you think that could be a reality?
I don't even know if my little head can wrap itself around that concept. They spent so much money between the two guards, paying Rob Havenstein a good amount. Obviously he's, over 30 now. So but Beaux Limmer's body type, Jonah Jackson body type, Kevin Dotson body type aren't necessarily the quintessential look of the guys that are at tackle. So, man, I don't know what you do at that point. Maybe you just get yourself a nice high leverage trade asset that you're able to flip into something that you can use immediately. Because I can't think of a world where, if you move Avila back to left guard, where you're paying $36 million to a guard tackle. I don't know. And it just becomes, there's just so much chatter about it, and the stock has risen so quickly that we got to know what's going to happen with this guy. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good problem to have, obviously, and I think
champagne problems, as McVay calls them.
Yeah, exactly, and they obviously hit a home run with this pick, which is great. And that it shows how impressive now this depth is. Like, clearly they'd never want to have a 2022 season ever again, which why would you? It was a disaster. But I mean, there was just like really put a red flag and a sore eye on their development at that position, and just the draft and strategy at the roster for the offensive line. They've really hammered home on, like, we need guys in those backup rooms that can really come in and start if need be. The only thing that I could think of being potential, but you're asking a guy now to move to a third position in a less than one season, and that would be moving Avila to tackle. And put Limmer at center, you keep Dotson and Jackson at guard, you have Havenstein at right, and you move Avila over to left tackle. Now, he played a little bit of right tackle at TCU, so it's asking a lot of him. And I'm not even saying this is even a conversation, but this is a podcast, so we can have a conversation. But, 6'3", 340, I think he's got the size. Usually, like, tackles to be a little bit taller. He's definitely guard height, but he's a super talented, aggressive, physical player that I think could do it. I wouldn't say it's ideal, but if Beaux Limmer's playing, I mean, you're moving Avila from guard to center, maybe Limmer is actually playing center better. We're not reporting that, saying that's the case, but he's played well enough to, like, is that a conversation?
Well, we can report, per Jordan Rodriguez of The Athletic, he took all the snap reps with Stafford today on Thursday. So, I mean,
there you go.
I think they're going to roll with the 5 that we're going to roll with, but it's a fascinating proposition, and it's a good problem to have. So I think they've set themselves up nicely.
Yeah, and the best is
ability.
Availability.
The best ability is availability.
Ability is the availability. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the fact is he's available, and Jackson and others have been injured. Jonah Jackson is supposed to be back next week and get work back in, McVay said today. But you got to rely on the guys that are healthy. So anyway, It's a fascinating conversation, and it's one that I think is a good problem to have. If you have this late round draft pick, they've obviously seen great things out of Logan Bruss now. You still have Joe Noteboom on the roster that, highest paid backup out there. He's still on the roster. So, I mean, they got good depth.
With Ryan Wendell as the offensive line coach, all things are possible. the myth of the giant bearded man, the giant quiet bearded man, is growing exponentially in front of us, and it's exciting.
It's a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. So, all right, let's move on. You wrote an article today. We've talked about it a lot. I like to talk about it all the time. It's fun. Article today about why, I think it was Ben Solak who came out with the data point, but why Sean McVay is a better head coach than Kyle Shanahan. These two will always be married in terms of colleagues, obviously coming from Washington back in 2013, coaching together under McVay, or Shanahan's dad, Mike Shanahan, with also the likes of LaFleur and McDaniels and all the guys there. So, but I'll let you lead off. What the data point, or what dove into make the credit? We both believe so, but what made the data point of McVay being better than Shanahan?
Well, Solak was thinking of it more holistically than just as somehow some people think of it as just as the play caller or as the person that's on the field on Sundays leading the team, thinking of it more holistically. And I'll just, let his words kind of speak for themselves, as he is quite the good writer. He says self-documented evolution as a coach and as an individual. McVay went through, we've heard reports and he's talked about it himself. So, coming out of 2022, he looked at himself in the mirror and, didn't like that, how he responded to a tough and losing season. And also along with that came a offensive schematic shift that, the biggest of which has been their switch from the outside zone, inside zone kind of blocking schemes towards the gap blocking scheme. So that evolution, that personal evolution, along with the evolution of his own offensive philosophy, is why Solak put him above Shanahan. So further, I'm just going to read it. The personal growth and the emotional intelligence is a key factor when differentiating McVay from his contemporary Shanahan. It's a matter of inches, he says, but I think Shanahan is a slightly better offensive mind, but McVay seems to get along better with his players and lets his personnel department work for him, which produces a better team overall. It's not fair to say Stafford chose Los Angeles over San Francisco because he favored McVay over Shanahan, but the fact of the matter is McVay got Shanahan into the building and has the hardware to show it. Mic drop.
Boom. Boom.
Yeah. And it's, you look at the head-to-head record, which all the Niners fans will always point out, 10 victories to five losses for the Shanahan-led 49ers. Obviously, one of those losses was the NFC Championship game that propelled the Rams into the Super Bowl to win that game, and to ever have their names etched in glory in that way. Shanahan does not have one, does not have the ring, does not have the Lombardi. So, and to be fair to Shanahan, he puts Shanahan one slot below. It's not like, the 49ers have put out consistently good products under Shanahan. But, we were talking about it heading into this conversation. It's just, head coaching has more to do than just running the offense or picking out the best players. There's a lot more that goes into it. And McVay's just better at that. There's constant turmoil. They're going through turmoil right now. They can't get Brandon Ayuk signed. Trent Williams isn't showing up right now. He's probably just skipping camp because he's an old man, but
doesn't have to. He's a vet.
Yeah. A couple years ago it was Debo having the same problems, and they seemed perfectly willing to just be like, all right, Debo. And they eventually got it worked out, obviously. But yeah, what are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, it's a great kind of analysis point, because it's, as you said, and as he wrote, like, the head coach has so much more they're responsible for than just the game plan and the play calling. And that's not to say Shanahan's terrible at all the rest of the stuff. But when you look at it from roster building, because he has a big say in roster building, both these head coaches do. And that includes free agency and the draft. And when it comes in, as he called it, emotional coaching?
Emotional intelligence, yeah.
Emotional intelligence. So basically connecting with your players. There's never been, I don't think there's, you might know better than me, but I've never heard anyone like come out and like blast Shanahan or say anything bad. But I think it's known that it's very like coach player. Whereas Shanahan or McVay and his players, there definitely seems to be much more of a bond and a love. And all the time, players that come to LA are like, man, it's different here. Like, it's just the leadership is different here. The vibe is different here. The family is different. And I think that's the culture that McVay has built and why they've been so dominant and have that one ring to show for it and hopefully more to come. But it's like with, a lot of jobs in the sense that like writing, for instance, right? We've learned this in this industry. You can be the best writer in the world, but if you don't know all the other stuff like SEO, formatting, images, graphics, marketing, social media, no one's going to see your writing unless you're with like one of the big wigs. They do it all for you. That's kind of like this coaching is like, there's so much more to it than just having an offensive genius mind. Like there's so much more into building a program and a franchise the right way. Again, this is not saying Shanahan's bad. They're one of the best teams in football and have been since he's been there. But this is why I agree with Stolak, who wrote this, that McVay is just an etch better because of those other intangibles that he brings. So, yeah, it's good for him to reiterate what we've been saying. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It always feels good to be right, or have somebody else agree with you anyway. Yeah, I still don't know if I'm right, but you drinking a White Claw there? That's great.
Yeah, we had I need to drink more water. I'm terrible at drinking water. And of course I could have done that right now, but we didn't have any like soda or juice and I just didn't want water. So I'm like, well, it's almost 5. I guess a White Claw will do.
I love it.
Basically soda.
We've seen so many examples of offensive or defensive geniuses, coordinators that are just, Eric Mangini, the man genius, he got a head coaching job going way back on that one. Vic Fangio, Brandon Staley, Arthur Smith. There's a whole list of fired coaches out there that are great at the play calling side, but they just can't put it all together. I mean, Brandon Staley's his chronicles of falling apart as a head coach are just historic. I mean, just doing a lot of things wrong. I don't want to pile on the guy. I mean, the poor guy got fired. Don't wish that on anybody, but it's a hard job, and there's a lot to it.
And you learn a lot. And what's crazy is how quickly McVay found success in this style. Because even Shanahan, I mean, he was obviously had to rebuild too. But that first year, I'm trying to remember their records, but their first year they were really bad, and then I think in year 2 is when he saw improvement. Right? I don't know. Yeah, he made the playoffs in year 1.
They had traded for Jimmy Garoppolo, and he sat until like the last 5-6 games of the season, something like that.
They won like 5 straight, right? Yeah,
they won all of them. Yeah, and then I think Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt the next year, and then right. They drafted that allowed them to draft Bosa. Yeah, CJ Beathard, Nick Mullins. So I don't think. I mean, his first winning record was probably his 3rd season, but I think that's the year they went to the Super Bowl, 2019. That makes sense. Yeah,
that sounds right. Yeah, that tracks. So, yeah, I just know it was funny because he had like 3 straight first-round picks in the top 5, and McVay has never had one. And this year was his first ever first-round pick, period, and it was 17 or whatever.
Weird.
I know, weird. Crazy. But anyway, good stuff. McVay, obviously, both coaches, 2 of the best in football, just depending where you rank them. But yeah, clearly we think McVay is just a little bit better. So let's end with this. Fun topic came out again. You wrote about it. It's on LAFBnetwork.com. Everyone can check it out. DeSean Jackson on, I don't even, what show is it? Some FS1 show, I think, with Shady McCoy.
Is what it's called.
Speak for yourself. That's right. But basically talked about how he regrets, I don't want to say forcing his way at LA, but basically brought in for a role. Or he did ask. Yeah. So, yeah, essentially did force his way out. basically brought in, didn't feel like he was being used enough. He said on the show, like he was used to being the guy. And, at this point in his career, he just wasn't anymore, but he still had that mindset. So he asked, like, I want to go somewhere I'm going to be used more. So Rams obviously trade him. They win the Super Bowl without him. He talks about having regrets of that and not just knowing his role and how he could help the team when asked. I have a way to spin this, but just quickly for you, like, what do you think of those comments from Jackson? Because we both, I think, when he was here, thought like, yeah, this is a nice spark, and then it just ended by week 4 or whatever. He was out.
Yeah, and you saw what it could be. I mean, he put up 3 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown against Tampa Bay, who had just won the Super Bowl the previous season. So a good team on the field, no slouches for sure. I mean, he was out at Rams camp actually, at the training camp. He popped in for a day. He had a whole kind of crew with him, entourage, and some, a bunch of photographers and cameramen with him. And I don't know what he's doing, but at first I thought, yeah, of course he regrets leaving the team because they went to the Super Bowl and they won, and they gave him a Super Bowl ring. Mm-hmm. Early in his career, 2008, he went deep into the playoffs with the Philadelphia Eagles, but for the rest of his career, he did not get to go on that journey. So I think it was more about that than the ring itself, or mm-hmm. He wanted to play on the biggest stage in all of sports, which is the Super Bowl. So, his mom followed me when he was on the team and promptly unfollowed me. And she would go after anybody that said anything bad to say about DeSean, which is just a really sweet story about a mom. But I kept my P's and Q's real straight when I was talking about him. Made sure everything was fair.
I've learned that too, now that I'm in much more involved in college football. Like, I get followed all the time by like new USC recruits or current players. And I'm like, not that I ever say anything bad anyway about people, but like, I always word it to like be very respectful, but even more so now I'm like, the last thing I need is a parent coming down my door about writing anything bad about their kids. So you got to watch out for that.
Yeah, and it is a good reminder, especially with college athletes and high school athletes. These people are people. They have families. They have people that care about them. So, like, let's watch our language when we're talking about them.
Yeah, which I think we do, but maybe some others out there need a little lesson. Not to point down on anyone, because I never want to do that. But I've seen some people that's like, these are human beings. Like, we can be critical about the way they play without like demeaning the type of player they are or the person they are.
Certainly, yeah. And it's funny looking back at that season. I was actually doing another piece about Puka Nacua, and he can actually break this record, 196 catches in first 2 seasons. 3 players actually hold that record. And he's the only one of the 3 that had caught more than 100 passes in his first year. Point being is he's got all this competition now with Jordan Whittington, fully healthy Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp caught 145 passes that year. He was targeted 196 times that year. Stafford was just peppering Cooper Kupp.
Crazy.
I don't know what to tell you, DeSean Jackson, but he was like, it's not you. It's not you.
Yeah.
Like the next leading receiver in the entire league was 166 catches, I think, or 166 targets that year. So it's just like, and that's just the regular season. And the next most targeted Ram, I think, was Van Jefferson, not even 100 targets that year.
Yeah.
So it's, that should be his biggest regret, is that he got out thinking that it was him. It was something that he wasn't doing right, or that the Rams had something personal against him. No, it was just Stafford was locked on to Cooper Kupp. Triple Crown season.
Robert Woods left the team too. So he got injured, but for very similar reasons. He wasn't really using the offense either. So, but it brings me to this, and we'll end with this. We've talked a lot through this preseason about Tutu Atwell and what his role could be. And we talked about other receivers potentially bringing more to the table, whether it be in special teams and also in that receiving room. But this could be a great example of a player that has a very defined role that may not be big on stat sheets or big in the eyes of the fan base or even big in the eyes of an analyst, because it's not going to show up. Like, he's a guy that we're like, if we say, hey, this guy should get, 600 yards receiving, that may just not happen. But if we look back, because, sometimes it's important to look back at history to look at the future. DeSean Jackson had a very specific role, right? He was the burner. He was basically meant to clear clear things out whether he got the ball or not. And even though it was few and far between that he was used, this could be an instance where if McVay feels like Tutu is worthy of the 6 or 7 receivers on this team, even if he only gets 5 to 10 snaps a game, if those 5 to 10 snaps also don't even come with a single catch, but they're doing enough within his route tree to clear things out for other players or keep the defense honest, which may open up the run game. Like they can't bring a safety down in the box. If he's on the field, they know that he can stretch it and burn past a guy that's, only 8 yards deep versus 15 yards deep. So that opens the run game up. So it could be that kind of thing where we're looking back at what DeSean Jackson learned, what he could have been, and maybe that is what Tutu Atwell will be in this iteration. Thoughts on that?
It's funny because the kind of the theory, the idea around those two players who joined the team in the same year, DeSean Jackson was signed in March, and then they drafted Tutu in April. Kind of this idea was DeSean was going to kind of model the way as to how Tutu could be used, and also probably help him develop as a player. I mean, I think Jackson was in year 13 of his career or so. Obviously still good speed, but not long for the world. He ended up retiring, last year. That was the idea behind those two. Now, fast forward a couple of years, DeSean was used at about 30% of snaps in the games that he played. So that's exactly the theory that you're using. Now, obviously, McVay does rotate players at the wide receiver position a bit, but he really wants to keep the same 3 receivers on in his 11 personnel packages as much as possible, because otherwise it becomes a tell. Well, this is going to be a deep pass. This is, and unless you have that B option, let's call it that, let's call the running game the B option, to make them pay, like say, hey, like we got Tutu Atwell out there, he's going to burn you, 2 high safeties to put a shell over him. Well, that lightens your box. That opens you up to a running game. They haven't had that up until last half of last year. And that coincided with Atwell's injury and getting replaced with blanking on his name, not Tyler Smith, not Xavier,
Tyler Johnson,
not Tyler Johnson, not Xavier Smith.
Demarcus
Robinson. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because he came on late in this. Like he was with the team, but he really broke out late in the season. Yeah.
So, we saw what that speedy guy can do in this offense, and he just wasn't happy with it. And yeah, I mean, I can see that, but I just don't know. Is it a McVay thing where he's kind of rigidly stuck to kind of like, I just want to like look exactly the same across the board, across every game. Mm-hmm. I would love to see that kind of element added back into it, and Gunslinger Matt comes back out,
Yeah. Well, we will see in about a week. Next week, 53-man roster, cut down days, tough day for a lot of players. I will be in Mexico, but you will be carrying the show and the website, so you'll have plenty of coverage on those cut downs and what the 53-man roster looks like. And then when I get back, we can do a recap before week 1 officially kicks off. So, yeah, it's exciting. Final week of preseason, and then we got real football to really get into the following week. So thank you all for hanging out with us here on the Ram Skinny. We certainly appreciate it. If you have not already, or if you've never even been there, the YouTube channel is Rams LAFB. Please hit that like and subscribe button. We certainly appreciate it. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast. Just search Ram Skinny. The website is LAFBnetwork.com. All of our LA football coverage, all your Rams coverage is right there. Podcast, video, digital, and article. And on Twitter, at RL Anderson LAFB, at Ryan Dyer at LAFB, or at LAFB Network is the main account. That's Skinny T. I'm Ryan Dowd. Everyone have a great weekend. Thanks for hanging out with us. Talk to you all again soon.